Hello, hello, hello. This is Tyler James with ComixLaunch, and I am here with a special interview today. My guest today is the Ringo Award-nominated writer of Spencer and Locke, Going to the Chapel, the OZ, Scout's Honor, and the upcoming Grand Theft Astro, and a whole lot more. He got his start in the comics industry in 2008 as an editorial intern at DC Comics, and is also served for a decade as reviews editor at Newsarama. He's also worked for the likes of CBS, Netflix, and Universal Studios, and is back on Kickstarter this month with the highly anticipated second issue of the smash Kickstarter hit, the OZ, which is an innovative take on the world of Oz. So welcome back to the ComixLaunch Podcast, David Pepose. How you doing, David?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind couple of days. As you can see on the screen, our Yellow Brick Road Warriors have come back in full force for our second Kickstarter, and we've blown through all expectations. We're over 300% funded. I think we're actually closing on 400% as we speak. And it's very surreal. I'm very much pinching myself.
Yeah. Blowing past expectations has kind of been a theme for you as of late with these launches. I'm excited to have you back on the show. You were nice enough to join us back on ComixLaunch session 270 last year with the first OZ launch. And you also were nice enough to come and speak to the ComixLaunch Mastermind. And I'm still getting creators pinging me saying, "Oh man, I just went back through that David Pepose masterclass on press releases," and so they're putting your stuff to good use in the world of comics. So thanks for what you do, man, and thanks for once again sharing what's working for you over here on the podcast, because I know there's a lot of creators that will be interested to hear from you. But where I want to start, I guess, before we dive into the awesomeness that is this new launch, is let's go back to that first big Kickstarter launch, the first launch for the OZ. I remember you sort of reached out to me early on in that launch after you had already got out of the gates red hot, funded and then some. And there was a part of you that was like, should I just stop and be happy with what I've got? Because I'm happy with what I've got. Or, should I really keep pushing this thing out? I've got 3 more weeks. And you made the decision to keep beating that drum. Talk to me a little bit about, that whole process. And then what made you decide to just really go for it? And then when it was all said and done and you could look back at okay, this launch, what was that all like? Take us back into your shoes there.
Well, I was lucky enough to get some really good advice when I asked about that. I'm gonna put this back on you because I remember asking you, hey, we blew through our goals in 2 hours. Should I keep quiet? Am I going to annoy people? And you had a really smart analogy for me. You said, if you hit your sales goals on the first day of a con, would you just leave the con, or would you keep selling? And I really, Kickstarter and the convention experience, there's a lot of overlap. This is a 30-day con. You get to be as interactive with your readers as you want to be. You get to kind of do the carnival barker thing on social media and whatever interviews you can do. And yeah, it's a 30-day hustle. And I think the thing that I want people to know, you can't be too shy on Kickstarter. You really can't. I mean, if anybody's going to get annoyed and think that you're spamming them, unless you're really, really spamming them, don't send people 1 million emails a day about it. But, if they're going to get annoyed with your Twitter or your Instagram or your Facebook, they're not going to buy the book. But ultimately, your first Kickstarter, that represents kind of a floor and a ceiling for you for any other Kickstarters you do down the line. So it really is incumbent upon you to, to hit the ground running as best you can, because, in theory, you can grow from here. And so I feel like the other thing I would say is you're not just doing this for you. You're doing this for your team. You're doing this for your collaborators who you're the face of the project, but you're promoting their work and their name and their reputation. So why wouldn't you want as many people to get to meet, to get to see the artwork of Ruben Rojas and colorist Whitney Kogar and letterer DC Hopkins? I mean, I want as many people as possible to see their tremendous work. And so that should be the fuel in your tank is this is not a one-man show. I mean, unless you're like one of those like gifted freaks who are able to like write, draw, and do it all on your own, in which case like you're more talented than me. But you know, if you're working with the team, then this is not, you know, this is a collaborative thing. And as the face of the project, you need to be representing your whole team. So
I think that's great. That's great advice. And yeah, you know, if you're worried about what people are going to think, you know, putting the focus back on the team is a good thing. Cause you know, for your artist like Ruben, like, you know, his market value just went up. Like he can raise his page rates for other writers based on, you know, he can point to this sales market success. And, you know, that's definitely going to help just everyone around by really going for it with this.
Yeah.
So I mean, the thing wraps over 1,200 backers, $46,000 raised. As someone who has been in, you know, working in the comics industry for a long time and writing seriously for the last 4 years, you're a grinder. You doing the convention scenes and everything, and also you know, done the small press publishing deals and this and that.
Yeah.
Like, what's it like to be like, wait a minute, okay, you know, I can actually get. Like that's real money. That's real funds hitting the bank account.
It's really it's a pinch me kind of thing. I mean, there's, you know, there's the direct market, which I was used to, you know, but I think Kickstarter in a good way, it's very much a different planet with its own laws of physics.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in certain ways, especially for our first Kickstarter, a lot of the same principles that you use for the direct market, they pay off in much larger ways for Kickstarter, because you know, not only is it a higher price point because these are artisanal comics coming straight from the creators, but there's no publisher involved, there's no distributor involved, there's nobody to be making cuts for except for the creative team.
Yeah.
And so you know, seeing those kinds of numbers, it can be financially equitable to run a Kickstarter in a way that it's much more challenging to do in small press. And so, yeah, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, I'd been really fortunate that, you know, I had seen all the incredible success of the Comics Tribe community and friends like Charlie Stickney from White Ash, Russell Nahelty, Pat Shand, Ryland Grant. They had all been kind of pushing me to say, you know, not only is this a way to kind of help fund your projects, but it's a whole different reading demographic that doesn't necessarily have as much overlap with the Wednesday Warriors that are hitting their comic shops every week. That's a whole different readership that you've done no outreach to. And
yeah, it is absolutely true. Like, I swear there are at least probably, like, I would say half of the people that back our Kickstarters would never go to our online shop or walk into a comic shop to get the same thing, even if they could save, you know, $10 or $15 to do it. They just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Some of it's about accessibility, you know? I mean, it is so much easier to sell a book on Kickstarter than it is to go through the direct market pre-order channels.
Yeah.
You know, you see a book on Kickstarter, you click a link, you say, this is what I want, you put in your credit card and you're done.
Yeah.
You know, somebody will send you the book when it's ready, and usually you'll forget you've ordered it, and then the book arrives, and you're like, "Oh, what a great surprise I ordered for myself." Whereas, you know, the direct market, I love the direct market, and I love retailers. The system that they've inherited, just it is extra hurdles for that accessibility. You know, you have to know the pre-order code, and you have to call your comic shop 3 months in advance, and the comic shop then has to like call the distributor and actually plunk that in, which doesn't always happen. And then you show up to the comic shop, and you know, hopefully they have the book, and hopefully in the comic shop side, hopefully you pick up the book, you know, when it's coming out. And you know, it's tough, you know, explaining to my mother how to pre-order a book through a comic shop versus here's a Kickstarter link, you can buy it. I mean, it's no comparison. And I think that is a big strength of the platform, especially as we've seen over the last year, where like going outside and going to stores, it comes at a premium. And, you know, whereas there's very little, you know, friction to get you on Kickstarter.
Absolutely. And from what I've been seeing, Kickstarter itself has just been doing even more of a job cross-promoting great projects to other great projects. And you can't really discount that. It is, you know, and I would say that there, you know, a great comic book retailer hand selling a good book, you can't really top that. But That's not always the case in the direct market, especially for
Right.
indies. And then also, it's nice that this is a system that can really, do so much of that
Yeah.
automated. So I do want to, this is striking me as a question and just something as a reality that I want to bring up, because it's on my mind, because I just cut what might be the largest single check I've ever had to write for a vendor to get 5,000 Cthulhu toys shipped from China here after the last big launch that we did for the Seas for Cthulhu brand. And so with a big launch like this, that also becomes a big fulfillment project. I'm assuming, even though you've been mail shipping some of your books around the country, maybe playing the eBay game a little bit, I'm assuming you never had over 1,000 orders to do in a short period of time. What was what did you discover about fulfillment in this?
What's funny is I had not done any mail shipping before the Kickstarter, so it was very much a learning curve for me. The funniest part was, I was living in a 2-bedroom in Los Angeles, and we got all of our books in on a Wednesday, and then we picked up a new puppy on that Saturday. So it was shipping over 1,000 books out of a 2-bedroom with half my living room turned into a puppy, into a puppy pen.
Yeah.
So it was, it was brute force, real talk. My girlfriend and I should have gotten her a Purple Heart for all that. I hunkered down pretty much exclusively for 3 weeks. And she would pop in when she was done with work, and we would just pack stuff, and then we would divide it all by reward tier, and then we would figure out, we were fortunate enough that we had a backer kit store, so we were able to kind of figure out all the different demographics of our readership and split them up by reward tier. And so we'd pack up 100 of whatever particular tier, and then we'd print 100 labels at the same weight, and we just slap it all on there. And then I bought actually an industrial sized laundry cart that they have for hotels. It's I think you can hold either 250 pounds or 400 pounds. And I would take all of the books and I'd put it in there. I'd take it to my car, empty the bin out, fold the bin back up, put it in my car, drive to the post office. And I did that for 3 weeks.
I think I'm going to add that. I have to add that laundry cart, foldable laundry cart, to the resource list of things. That's the first time I'd heard about it. But yes, what I end up always doing is using the boxes to put the stuff in. But sometimes you'll run out of boxes.
Yeah, it was a lot of Gemini mailers. I ordered so many boxes of Gemini mailers that the boxes stacked up were actually taller than me.
Yeah. That's awesome. The one little tip, and I don't know if you were going to the actual post office. I found that there's actually within driving distance of me, there's actually 2 post offices, the main one on downtown, and then there's also a receiving main headquarters post office. So this is something that people might want to check, because
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
The post office nearest to me is not a big post office. And so when I delivered, when I was delivering 20 of them at once, they didn't bat an eye. When I had a whole cart of them, they were like, no, you cannot bring that here.
Yeah.
So I had to drive to another post office that was a little further away. And I had to take my cart and I had to wheel it around the back. They wouldn't even take it in the front. They were like, you have to throw it in one of the shipping boxes in the back. And so it was brutal. I'm excited to do it again. But it was definitely, I was telling myself, oh boy, I hope it's a little while before I do this again.
Yeah, you definitely, you're like, wow, I'm really sweating just packing and shipping comics.
Yeah.
So, well, I think it's always good to share that and to know that, on the other end of these launches, there is a lot of work that goes involved, even above and beyond just creating the book and everything. But clearly you were excited to come back, and now you're back with issue number 2.
Yeah.
So, but one of the nice things about your first Kickstarter launch is you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. You may have expectations. You'll set a goal that's reasonable, and then you blow them out of the water. Now coming back for your second launch, your expectation level of it had to have been set at a new benchmark.
Wow.
So what was that like coming into the second launch? How did you approach this one differently, if at all? And what worked from the first launch that you're keeping, and what might you be trying differently?
Yeah. Well, so, for me, the big challenge was making sure that, like, you want to temper your expectations. I approach every comics project as conservatively as I can. And I think that was one downside I had in the last Kickstarter, was I had prepared for failure. I had said, how are we going to make $6,000 in 30 days? At no point in my mind did I ever think, what would happen if you make $6,000 in 2 hours? That just, and so I spent the rest of the campaign kind of playing catch up a little bit, sort of how do we keep adding value to the book? How do we kind of keep the excitement going and offer new rewards that, like, we can get on time, and that's not going to blow up our budget, and that's going to blow up our shipping budget. And this campaign, I gave myself permission to think of success. So, we have stretch goals planned. We're in the process right now of, we have a digital comics extravaganza that we're going to be offering when we hit $25,000. If you liked our enamel pins last time, you might want to stay tuned. We might have something cool in that vein. Same thing, the theme song that we made, the behind the scenes commentary, stickers, prints. We've been really trying to sort of swing for the fences on this. But it is a little different. It is a different animal. And actually, we were talking right before the thing. That'll be something I'd love to ask you some questions on as well.
Yeah.
Is, because it's a second Kickstarter, attacking everything with pure publicity doesn't quite work, because you'll have some outlets that are very friendly who will say, oh yeah, like, you're coming back for round 2. We'd love to do a preview or run a story. But a lot of the bigger ticket places, they're going to be like, well, it's the second issue. We were lucky enough to get IGN and Sci-Fi to cover us last time, and understandably, they're like, well, it's the second issue. Like, we only really have the time to do the announcement. And so the advantage is that you have to start playing by Kickstarter rules a little bit more. Yeah. Things like hitting up your previous backers. I was sending updates to all of our backers. I was sending them messages through Backer Kit. I was, in my newsletter talking about, hey, the Kickstarter is running, or the Kickstarter is going to start. Here's the pre-launch page. We had over 500, I think 530 backers on our pre-launch page when we started.
Yeah. And
as a result, that, we started off really strong.
Yeah.
From that. The other thing that, we've been talking with other campaigns about is, like, how do we do some cross promotion? Because again, there's only so much, that you can see on Kickstarter. But if you back a project that you really dig and they say, oh, well, hey, you should check out the OZ. We just did a cross promotion with Keith Champagne's book, The Millionaire's Magician.
Yeah.
Because I saw that was wrapping up, and I'm a big fan of Keith's work. And so I was like, hey, like, do you want to do some cross promo? And that's something that I think you need to do throughout the course of your campaign. I think beyond that, being aggressive on social media, and when I say aggressive, I don't mean like bugging people, like being like, oh, why didn't you back my book? But what I mean is it's a numbers game. If I wanted to do so, and I haven't really had the time or wherewithal to do so yet, but if I scheduled a tweet every hour with just the hashtag comics and the hashtag Kickstarter and link, and I did that for 30 days, we would be making some significant bank off that. It's just numbers, and with those hashtags, you would be shocked at how many people will see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you do that on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You do that for 30 days, that it's a snowball effect that really kind of builds up steam. But I think, I will say, doing as many interviews as you can, especially there's so many podcasts that are so wonderful. I think they are a little less beholden to the just announcement, review, it's over cycle.
Right.
Some of the print sites might have. Podcasts, people love having returning guests. And I think by virtue of that helps get the word out on your books. But the thing that I want to stress for people as well is, I think, and this might be a weird thing to say, especially on this podcast, but there are things that are out of your control. and sometimes they can be helpful. We launched our last campaign with Scott Snyder,
Right.
and so a lot of people getting drawn into the platform. And then when Keanu Reeves did his Kickstarter, a lot of people were coming into the platform. But there's going to be times where like you just can't control it. Sometimes the market's going to have a certain floor and a certain ceiling, and you just kind of roll with it. That's why I really do. I encourage Kickstarter creators, go as conservatively as you can with your goal, because then you'll hit it. You'll feel good about that. And if it funds quickly, then people really love backing a winner. If you say that it was funded in 40 minutes, if I had said that I wanted a $20,000 goal on this, I'm sure I could have hit it eventually. But, $6,000 felt like, that would cover all the costs for this book.
Right.
I would just break even on that. And now, we're making profit off of that. So, it really is. It's figuring out the numbers and what you think you can realistically hit. And then everything else is sort of the cherry on top.
Yeah. And a lot of it is also like, what kind of launch do you want to have? Because, if you're like, I want to make 20K, like that, it's 20K or bust, like, okay. Huh. But that might be you're doing those tweets every hour, and right. you are getting on every podcast, and you're grinding to the end. And if that's a game you're willing to play and shoot for, go for it.
It's very much rolling the dice, the higher you go. And it's also, for me especially, I don't want to be greedy. I think that's it's a weird balancing act, because I know we've talked about, like, you never stop hustling. Yeah. And that, I think, is something you never stop hustling. But at the same time, like, you want your readers to know that, like, they're getting a value, and right. they're getting bang for their buck, and that you're not just padding your pockets, so to speak.
Well, and just in terms of showing the value and displaying that, one thing that I noticed that you've done here is you're not shy about showing off a big chunk of pages here. It looks like you brought people in back with the first issue, and then you're showing a full quarter of the 44-page second quarter. I don't know that I've hear it as often, but there are still the creators, especially creators that haven't done this yet, that would say, I don't want to show off too much of my book because no one will buy it. That wasn't a concern of yours? No.
This is something that I've believed in for all of my books. Is I sincerely believe you want to show off a quarter of your book. It's just, I think that's a good, solid kind of percentage. You're not giving away the store by showing the first quarter. And look, if you've got like a big, like, spoiler twist in those first quarter pages, then, put out put a big block on the panel and just say, classified. Yeah. But I feel like you want people to feel confident in the book, and you want them to know that, like, it's either done or you've got a significant amount of it done. I'll be honest, as somebody who backs a lot of Kickstarters, I'm at like 460 something Kickstarters, and all but a handful are comics. The biggest turnoff that I have seeing a Kickstarter campaign is not seeing finished pages. Yeah. Because then my thinking is, you haven't done any work for this. Like, why should I trust this book sight unseen? Yeah. Or, can I trust that you're going to get it done if I give you the money? And by showing, 11 pages, we're putting our money where our mouth is. And we're just saying, look, like, we're giving you as much of the store as we can give you. And it's, because these are 44-page issues, you're getting a significant amount of story there. Yeah. And I think that sort of, it increases the feeling of value. People feel like they're going to get like a weighty, satisfying story, because they're like, this is 11 pages. That's the preview. How much more is there left? And, well, there's another 33 pages left.
That's right. Do the math.
If you like those 11, you're going to love what the next 33 have.
Yeah. And, it's something that I've long said, if you're a first time or you're a creator that's just trying to get your book out there, you couldn't go to any publisher without at least 5 pages and a couple covers to show that, hey, you know what an American comic book looks like.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways, Kickstarter is in lieu of the publisher here, the Kickstarter backers.
Yeah.
And they want to see that you can do the job and that you've put some skin in the game and that they're not the only ones footing the bill for this.
Exactly that. I saw a Kickstarter recently where they were asking for a significant amount of money, and they were like, "We've barely started on the book." And my thinking is, well, then why are you asking for this amount of money? Like, sight unseen, like that seems unwise. And yeah, I think, I know there's a lot of weight about a video for the Kickstarter, and I do think you should do a video, but ultimately the thing that's going to make or break it's your pages.
Yeah.
And just giving readers a taste of like what to expect with this story, and just sort of get us, give them a sample of your voice, and let them decide. As a result, is this something that sounds exciting to me? It's more than just the premise; it's also getting a taste of the execution.
Yeah, yeah. So something to chew on a little bit as someone that definitely thinks about this from, obviously you go deep in the craft of things, and I know you are as a writer's writer in a lot of ways, and really been studying the medium of comics for a while. But I also know that you're paying attention to the market and the marketplace, and I've found that with Kickstarter right about like around now, like a lot of times the difference between a $5,000 or a $10,000 or a $25,000 or a $50,000 Kickstarter, comic Kickstarter in some cases, can simply be attested or mostly be attested to how many damn variants are they offering.
Yeah.
And I saw a campaign the other, and I'm like, oh, they got 400 backers, but they're closing in on 50K. And it's like, oh, they have like 20 variant covers and the metal variants and every possible permutation of variants. And I know that Brian Polito has an entire fulfillment team to manage the army of variant covers for every single number one that he launches. I'm curious, like, and so you see that works. I'm also someone that's been publishing comics, under the Comics Tribe banner since 2011, and I've got a lot of comics in my storage and a lot of different variant covers, and the variant sprawl is insane. So I'm curious, like, how are you navigating that game and that business model with the series, and now even going into the second issue?
It's funny because I feel like. So we have 3 variant covers for this series, plus the main cover. So that's 4 covers in total. And we had a secret 5th cover for our last Kickstarter, and I think if we reach a certain benchmark, who knows what the future might hold there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's funny. Like there is a certain line that I kind of straddle there, because ultimately, like, I want my books I want people to read them for the story. First and foremost, like I think it's sometimes it can be very easy to conflate our stories with collectible product,
right?
And for me, the way I approach my variants is, what are some different aesthetics that I can bring to the mix? So if somebody maybe isn't vibing on Ruben's main cover, which I don't know why they wouldn't, then maybe check out Mon House's cover, which is a lot more stylized and impressionistic. Or, let's, Fareed Karimi's cover, which is like much more action packed, and it's got all the characters in it. And that it's just such a striking cover. Or, for the diehard comics fans, we have Sam Iroz's cover, which is an homage to Spectacular Spider-Man number 200, which is, one of my favorite Marvel covers of all time. And so being able to kind of like tackle some different angles of this stuff, that's really appealing to me, and it sort of helps cover some spread a little bit. I do think there's a degree of people on Kickstarter who they do have favorite covers, and they might not have picked the book up specifically if it was just the main cover, but something about that other cover just tipped them over the net, and that's all that matters to me. But it is nice to have, then you get kind of bundled sets, because what happens for the people who are like, well, I dig a couple of these covers, or maybe I want to get some for some friends. And so you say, all right, well, here's 4 covers. I'll sell it to you for the price of 3. And so, it's still kind of a net gain for you as the creator. And we're building on that for part 2. We anybody who missed the last campaign, we have 9 cover bundles where you can get just one of everything. And so, yeah, it's definitely, there's a balancing act for sure. I mean, I'm not as well versed in things like the metal covers, or things like that. And I don't know how it would interact with the art. And so that's always my first concern is like, I want it to look good rather than be something that's super rare. But I feel like having variants is a good plan. I don't know if I have the Rolodex to do like 20 of them like Brian Pulido. But for me, it's always about, who can I work with who I haven't met before, or people who I am familiar with, and what new voice can they kind of bring to the mix? I had a conversation with Charlie Stickney about this when I was getting ready, when we finished the first Kickstarter. And I was like, should I use the same cover artist as we did last time? And he was like, no, I don't think so. Like I would shake it up. I would keep throwing in new cover artists because you never know, who they're going to bring to the mix, and you never know what their fans are going to look like. And you might get, somebody who, turned a blind eye to your first campaign and be like, oh, I really love that Fareed Karimi cover. Let me catch up on the whole thing.
Yeah. And I guess, if you're setting up those social media posts and angles, like there's no reason you can't also mention that you got those first covers from for volume 1, and hey, second chance to get X, Y, or Z, and now you've got 7 artists or whatever whose names you're highlighting. That's a good point. And then also, I think one of the benefits of Kickstarter launching, as you're seeing with reaching out to other creators that are launching and cross-promoting, or it's an opportunity. It's like, hey, I'm going to raise some money. I'm going to spread that around the comic creator community and build more goodwill and build that Rolodex so that 5 years from now, you are, challenging the Politos of the world. Yeah,
exactly. And it's just also as a creator, if there's anything just to get something new in the mix, I'm restless by nature, and and so getting these new artists to do things, it's like, oh, that's super cool. And the great thing is that even the artists whose cover, we had their covers last time, and they're still working on stuff for us. Yeah. We have a very cool stretch goal with Rio Burton that will hopefully unlock soon in the campaign. And Kenneth Wagdon has something that will probably roll out in the 3rd Kickstarter. So it's really, there's so much cool stuff you can do.
Yeah.
And so, why not, build these connections and build these relationships? I find that variant cover artists, it's a great way to build relationships with new artists in a way that is not going to break your bank, is not going to take a million years to get done. And, it's just kind of a win-win all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And who doesn't like seeing more interpretations of the characters they've created from different artists? That's part of the most.
I love it.
The biggest fun. Yeah. So I'm curious, is there anything for this campaign that you're going to do differently? Or you just like, or was there anything from the first campaign that's like, oh, that, the success glossed over a couple of things. We talked a little bit on the fulfillment side and orchestrating that, but yeah.
There are a few things that I've been doing differently. The first one is streamlining the rewards, because, they get exponentially more complicated the more you're doing. And so, it's now you have to do things with issue 1 and 2. And so, a lot of the sort of special extra stuff that I had been doing the last campaign, we had a collectible card that we had in the last one. Then I'm like, that was too complicated. There were too few people who bought in on that. And I think a number of people who didn't quite understand that, like, these were not like individual sketch cards. It was just a collectible design card of Dorothy Gale's design. I was just like, that was not worth the hassle. And so, we lopped that off. And also, I did a lot of research about international shipping, because that was kind of the one thing that I think I messed up on in the last campaign was, I didn't really understand. I didn't have a shipping mechanism until after the campaign wrapped. Yeah. And so I was, I think, very naive in thinking, oh, international shipping, $25, which that meant that there were some international packages that I was sending out at a loss, because I didn't realize, like, oh, at that weight, no, that's like $40 shipping or $60 shipping, depending on the country. And I know we've had a couple of backers express some disappointment, with the second campaign. And it's like, shipping to Australia or shipping to the UK it is expensive.
Yeah.
But I would much rather sort of be upfront with our backers. And now that we've kind of learned our lesson, just being like, hey, like, we know upfront shipping is expensive. And if you want to get a digital copy, as a result, we totally understand. I think beyond that, it's tempering expectations a bit and figuring out, who are you going to gear your rewards to? A cameo in the book, for example, are you going to gear that towards somebody who backed the last campaign, or are you gearing it for people who didn't back the last campaign? And so it's a different kind of metric because you're including all the issue 1 covers as well. And so, it's very much a learning curve. It's one that we're still kind of learning a bit in the second round. It's figuring out, I consider myself a little bit of a hammer when it comes to publicity. And so I usually treat the problem like a nail. And this has been a very different learning curve, and just realizing, like, you can't just rely on interviews, can't just rely on podcasts. It's about the Kickstarter community. It's trusting in the Kickstarter platform a little bit more. And it's working within that community. It's working with other campaigns. It's working with your previous backers. It's, keeping in contact with both your new campaign and your original campaign for anybody who, for whatever reason, has not noticed that there's another campaign going on.
Yeah. And that can be a tough thing for us, the creator, because we see every tweet, every post, every email message, every update. There's no other human being on the planet that sees all the volume that we put out. So
exactly. It's a numbers game. If somebody sees the OZ once on Twitter, they'll shrug. If they see it 7 times in one day, they'll be like, all right, well, this guy won't shut up about it. Like, let me see what the book is.
And then they see 3 people whose opinions they respect, that they follow on Kickstarter, have already backed it. Now you're getting that social proof popping up, and so this is a lot of time. A lot of one of the things that we talk about is measuring the ROI of any one little thing can be tough. It's like, Facebook ads don't work at all.
Yeah.
Or Twitter doesn't work, or Instagram doesn't work. But the combination definitely can shape a narrative and shape an interest and drive buying decisions. And like, as you said, like in some cases, like you need to even see something pop up 7-8 times before you recognize it even exists in the world, because we're so saturated with marketing messages.
And I'll tell you, something that I want people to know, just because, like, you might not see that return on the investment immediately, but it's there. If you keep talking, somebody's going to listen. I can tell you that I've gotten work based on the strength of the last Kickstarter. And it was because, they saw the dollar amount, but also they were just like, you would not shut up about that book. I kept seeing you on every site. I kept seeing you on Twitter every single day. And that is what a lot of places, that is honestly the thing that I think publishers want more than anything. I think they, if they had to choose between a writer who was like A+ talent versus a writer who will be relentless about promoting the work, they might go for the writer who's relentless about promoting the work, to be quite honest. Even if they're more of a B+ than an A+.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that, like, the success of your Kickstarter is not just the success of your Kickstarter. You hustling, that's your reputation, and you're going to take that beyond this Kickstarter. You're going to take it beyond other Kickstarter projects. You're going to take it beyond it. That'll go to the direct market. That'll go to any other part in this comics industry that you want. But you have to show that you're not going to shut up about this book, that you're going to be relentless about it. And people notice. If you are, like, really putting yourself out there, it will pay off.
Absolutely. And so that's a good segue to just for those that have not been over to the Kickstarter yet.
Yeah.
Be relentless. Plug this book.
Sure.
Why are people that missed out on the first issue need to jump in now, and what's there to come back if you checked out the first one?
Well, for those who aren't familiar with the OZ, it's like what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz? It's the story of Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's a disillusioned Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. And she learns that when her grandmother killed 2 wicked witches and convinced the Wizard of Oz to leave and then clicked her heels together 3 times and split, it caused a power vacuum not unlike Baghdad that plunged Oz into decades of brutal civil war. And so now this new Dorothy, she has to navigate her grandmother's former friends, the Tin Soldier, the Scarecrow, and the Prince of Lions, if she hopes to survive the horrors of the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ. So if you're a fan of Mad Max, if you're a fan of the Old Guard, if you like Lord of the Rings or DMZ or Fables or Fallout, you're going to love this book. This is absolutely for you. And yeah, our second issue, anyone who's ever read any of my books should know the first issue is always the quiet issue because that's where we establish everything. Our first issue, we met Dorothy Gale. We sort of got into her head a little bit about what she experienced overseas and figured out what turned the magical land of Oz into the war-torn occupied zone. Now we've gotten our vegetables out of the way. The exposition is in our rear view. And issue 2, that means we get to put pedal to the metal and really floor it. We get to explore so many dangerous new corners of the occupied zone. And we get to introduce some really cool new characters, particularly getting to see more of the Prince of Lions, Toto, and Jack Pumpkinhead, who are going to really kind of form the last pieces of Dorothy's special forces as they embark on a dangerous quest to find the Silver Slippers before the Scarecrow's regime can use them to invade our world. So it's super fun. I think now that the team has known each other longer, I think we've been really kind of loosening up and like doing some really cool stuff. You can see in our preview pages just how much growth that Ruben Rojas and Whitney Kogar and DC Hopkins and me as a writer have had since the last Kickstarter. And yeah, just seeing this team together, especially the Prince of Lions, that's Ruben Rojas's favorite character to draw. So expect some really cool visuals there and just some cool world building. This is just, there's going to be a lot of fun twists and turns and just some really emotional beats in all this. Especially if you liked our reveal of Toto in our first issue, will love issue 2 because he's got a big damn hero moment that is, I think, one of my favorite parts of the whole series.
Absolutely awesome. And yeah, and just scrolling through the pictures, issue 1 looks great, but Ruben's really grown, just in terms of that and the color, your color artists, who's coloring this book?
Whitney Kogar from Days.
Yeah. It's humming on all cylinders, man. And I am not surprised that, almost half of your backers have already come back a couple of days in. And a whole lot of time on the clock to really blow this thing up and to continue to grow so that you can make a whole lot more of this stuff. Before we go, is there anything else you want to plug or pitch or coming up that you're excited about?
Sure. Well, first off, anybody who's interested in the OZ, you can visit us at bit.ly/the OZ comic. Or the OZ Comic 2. Both of them will take you to the same site. If you missed our first campaign, we have catch-up tiers, both print and digital, so we can get you up to speed. And we'll also have a backer kit store. So if there's ever, we have packages involving all of my previous trade paperbacks, Spencer and Locke 2, Going to the Chapel, Scout's Honor. But there are a lot of people who said, well, I already have 3 of those trades, but Scout's Honor isn't coming out until September. I really want to get that. We're going to have a backer kit store at the end of the campaign. That's where we'll collect all of your shipping information. And you'll be able to add on any of these, any cover or in any trade paperback, you'll be able to add that on individually.
Now, I'm curious, did you opt not to add add-ons to the Kickstarter side?
Yes. And there was a couple of reasons for that. One was just for keeping it simple. Mm-hmm. I thought I still think that interface is a little easy to miss and a little easy to misinterpret, but also financially, BackerKit's been very good to us. I figured we use it not just as a checkout store, but as a tool to help us with our shipping.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if you do all the add-ons on Kickstarter, and then you have add-ons on BackerKit, it basically you're sort of getting a double bite out of each purchase for that. And so financially, we just said it would be simpler and financially more responsible to just have one storefront versus two.
Can I I was sort of under the impression that would be the case.
Yeah.
And I found that's absolutely not the case.
Really?
Because we did I've had 2 launches since Kickstarter's add-ons have been available, and Happy Hill will be the 3rd that just wrapped up. We did not, surprisingly enough, even though we offered add-ons during like the Wailing Blade Kickstarter, during the Kickstarter campaign, we did not see a substantial decline in the percentage or the amount of extra add-ons raised after the campaign. C is for Cthulhu, when we did that, we also did not, and in fact, we saw a greater than, even though, and I think the psychology here is just simply, it's 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And people that buy and people that add things at checkout will always add things at checkout. And it's just another opportunity to add more stuff at checkout. And of course, if you do happen to add extra stuff or that you can point out. And so I would say, like, and then the nice thing is BackerKit has figured out how to handle and keep separate stuff that you add on Kickstarter versus stuff that you add on BackerKit, and kind of, like it's they can manage that. So it's not like you're going to screw them up. And so, if you're looking to add more to the Kickstarter, and probably not affect the BackerKit at all,
you might convince me there.
I would recommend, like, even if you just add a few things that people are asking for, it can give surges, especially during the middle of the campaign when things do start to slow down a little bit. Hey, new add-on available, and
this is why they pay you the big bucks.
This is why, that's right.
That's a great idea, and one that I may very well incorporate.
But yeah, I thought the same thing. Like, I will be taking money out of BackerKit's pocket. Turns out, not really. And I think it is really just that psychology. Like, people that shop, there's a certain percent, and likewise, there's some people, like, I almost never add anything to checkout, because, like, I bought my thing, and I'm not shopping because I don't want to, like, I'm a pretty cheap consumer when it comes to buying my own entertainment products. Like, I'm not a variant hunter. I'm not a collection person. I'm not my ideal customer. But,
I get it. You gotta pay your creators. So I
it is true. Well, cool, man. Yeah. And again, there is I will always say, though, as someone that has been spending the past couple of days setting up BackerKit for the next one, there is something to be said for streamlined and simple, and just like less can be more time, at least, on the fulfillment side. But the nice thing is more funding can be useful too. So I'm really excited, and for anyone listening, or watching,
every backer counts. I know we keep talking about the financials of all this, but real talk, the reason I'm doing Kickstarter was because I wanted a direct pipeline to a readership, and a readership that I had done no outreach to. For me, if we got 500 new backers just at the lowest tier, I would be thrilled, because for me, it's all about how many people can we introduce this book to. And so tell your friends, share on social media. It's a huge help. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Pepose D. It's my last name and first initial, or subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/Pep News. I'll be talking about this until my voice gives out. But every backer counts, and as you can see, every single backer I send a personal thank you note to at the end of every day of the Kickstarter. It's a good way to kind of wind down for the day and take stock. But you matter to me. And so we'd love to have you join the Emerald Army and see us in the trenches of the OZ.
Well, you're showing how the Kickstarter platform can really be a renewable resource and an asset for creators that treat it well. So thank you for continuing to give back to the platform and doing it well and making a great book. And so congrats to you and your team. And this is again just the beginning. So this will be live when the podcast airs. Your campaign will still be live. So definitely check out the OZ 1 and 2 and more from David Pepose as he continues to rock Kickstarter and the comics market. So thanks, David, so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for tuning in and watching live.